Every good story needs a rivalry which keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. And a rivalry there was. A car which went from being one of the biggest gambles BMW had ever made to becoming one of the most successful race cars to ever exist. This is the story of the E30 M3. Back in 1983, Mercedes teamed up with AMG and started working on a modified version of the 190E. They had their eyes on an upcoming racing series, DTM. Not only was DTM starting, but the Nürburgring race circuit had also reopened. Mercedes then held a race at the circuit and featured some of the world's best drivers who raced on the circuit behind the wheel of the Mercedes-Benz 190E 2316. Try saying that 3 times. A high-performance version of the 190E which had some modifications done to it. The race concluded with Ayrton Senna winning the race. While this was all happening, BMW was still racing in their big heavy cars. Because of Bob Lutz, BMW had the M division which solely focused on making race cars. Just like every other major car manufacturer at the time, BMW also decided to participate in DTM. DTM also followed FIA's strict rules for Group A. DTM stood for Deutscher Tourenwagen Meisterschaft. Try saying that 3 times. It was a touring car racing series for the German car manufacturers to show what the touring cars were capable of. The most important rule was definitely homologation. To participate in DTM, a car had to be based on a production car, which meant no company could join the racing series with a one-off car which was built specifically for racing. Usually for homologation, you needed to at least produce 500 cars, which by the way is also the reason we have cars like the Audi Quattro, the Lancia Stratos and the Ford RS200. But those are topics for another day. Here in DTM though, 500 cars wasn't enough. To participate, you needed to at least produce 5,000 road cars. This was done to prevent manufacturers from making one-off race cars which had 500 road cars. Since 500 was too small of a number, DTM definitely had more stricter rules at the start, but love it or hate it, rules made racing more fun, more competitive and forced engineers to innovate. Without rules, we would have never had some of the best racing cars competing in some of the most entertaining, high-octane racing series. But anyways, this rule meant that car manufacturers had to use a car which was already part of their lineup to compete in DTM and modify it for racing. BMW at the start used a 635 CSI and ended up winning the first ever DTM championship, but they weren't able to keep up with the lighter cars a year after. In 1986, Mercedes took the second place just behind Ford. Yes, Ford started participating in DTM and was destroying the Germans at their own racing series. It was humiliating. Gone were the days of big heavy race cars with the powerful and grunty engines. Cars were getting lighter, more aerodynamic and more efficient. Changes needed to be made and BMW had to change and adapt quickly, or otherwise Ford would have swept the floor and Mercedes 190E would have had the spotlight moving forward. All of this didn't sit right with BMW CEO at the time, Eberhard von Kuenenheim. And he made it his mission to bring glory back to BMW and prove to the world that BMW were and still are the ultimate driving machine. Going forward, BMWs won't only be luxury cars for to take your beautiful wife and kids in for dinner, but also cars that you can be in to destroy everyone at the track. BMWs will be where luxury meets performance. Eberhard told the engineers to build the best touring car they can and show the world what the M division was capable of. He wanted BMW to crush the competition and win. As I mentioned before, homologation was the most important rule to join the DTM. They needed a powerful yet light car, something made for winning the DTM. A car which BMW didn't have at the time. So after looking at the lineup, they chose to go with the 3 Series. A light and small sedan, a perfect family car, but it was in no condition to even participate in the DTM, let alone win it. It could have never kept up with the 190E or the Ford Sierra. But in the eyes of BMW, the 3 Series had untapped potential, but then they thought, well, what if we make a race car and sold that instead of modifying the 3 Series? And they did exactly that. The engineers at the M division took apart a 3 Series and started rebuilding it to be a race car. Firstly, the engine. The 3 Series engine just wasn't good enough for racing. So with the help of one of history's best ever engine designers, Paul Roche, yes, the same Paul Roche who designed the engine for the McLaren F1, started work on a completely new engine for the new race car. They first looked at the engine in the M1 race car, the M88. The M88 had a problem. It was too big and heavy for the lightweight 3 Series they were trying to make. So what did Paul Roche do? He sliced off 2 cylinders from the straight 6 M88 engine. The result was a lighter 4-cylinder engine which still had most of the benefits from the M88 engine. It was strong enough to withstand the beating from racing, and it made double the horsepower the stock 3 Series engine made. This new engine would be named S14, and it only took Paul Roche about 14 days to design it. It took us longer to complete this video than it took that man to design an engine for a race car. Absolutely bonkers. The car had a dogleg transmission layout. Instead of pulling down to second gear and then pushing up to third gear, in the dogleg transmission, you would push up to second and then pull down to the third. It made shifting gears very easy on the racetrack, where you are constantly shifting up and down from 2 to 3 and vice versa. Just like the engine and transmission, it didn't hold back for other parts. It had a more aerodynamic body, it had space for wider tires, it got a new exhaust, and bigger and better brakes. The chassis itself was completely redesigned to make it more aerodynamic, and the car also had a new spoiler. BMW wasn't holding back one bit on the car. While this was all going down, the accountants at BMW weren't very sold on the idea of making a new race car and selling it to the public, because they thought that there just wasn't that big of a demand for a track-ready race car for the road. To the accountants, why would someone buy a race car version of a 3 Series when the 3 Series has always been a family sedan for luxury and comfort? It just didn't make sense to them. All they saw was BMW coming closer and closer to the brink of bankruptcy. Everhard, on the other hand, wasn't gonna stop. He refused to stop the project and continued on with the production of this new and powerful 3 Series race car. Though we have been referring to it as a 3 Series, this new race car had very little which was common with the 3 Series. In reality, it only shared a couple of body panels and interior bits with the original 3 Series at the time. This was as far as it could be from a 3 Series while still being close enough to be called a 3 Series. This new 3 Series would be called the M3. It took BMW about a year to complete the M3 project, and the first M3 was out on the racetrack as well as they were out for sale. A car which was a nightmare for the accountants ended up bringing in even more customers into dealerships. This was nothing like any car BMW had sold until now. It still had the essence of a 3 Series. It was a true definition of a grocery getter on weekdays and a track demon on weekends. You could drop your kids for soccer practice, your wife to the market, and then tear it up on the track right after. The car which the accountants thought wouldn't sell ended up selling more than what the factory could produce. It was a hit. BMW never intended it to be one, and it wasn't its purpose, but it still did it. Its purpose was to show it was still the boss and win. Win, it did. It didn't matter if the Sierra Cosworth and the Alpha had more horsepower. The M3 started quickly making its way to the front and crushed everyone which tried competing against it. Just because it had less horsepower than its competition didn't mean it would be slower around the track. The car gave its driver the confidence to drive it more rashly, more fearlessly, and it could do all of that without braking. The first ever races which the M3 participated in, it won them. Eric Van de Poel was a driver who would bring the victory for BMW at the DTM. The M3 didn't just stop after winning the DTM. The M3 went on to becoming one of the most successful race cars with having more than 1,400 wins. Some of its notable wins being the British Touring Car Championship, the European Touring Car Championship, the Australian Touring Car Championship, the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, the Spa 24 Hours, and the countless Rally Car Championships worldwide, and even the One of World Touring Car Championships title in 1987. The M3 changed everything for BMW and racing as a whole. Just like some notable cars which came after it, it was a race car which was fun to drive and easy to live with. You wouldn't need a team of mechanics to keep it running. It still had luxury and comfort just like any other BMW at the time. It was a perfect balance of sheer driving pleasure and elegance. Thanks to Eberhard, Paul Rouge, Bob Lutz and the talented engineers at BMW, the 3 Series and the M3 became so iconic and we got so many timeless classics from BMW.